Democrats are immediately using an atrocity, a mass murder, to advance their long-standing liberal priorities, in this case, gun control and constraining the rights of law-abiding Americans, without getting all the facts, without knowing exactly what happened, or to my knowledge, exactly what kind of firearm was used in this mass murder in Colorado. I think it's always appropriate that we take a pause, that we make sure we have all the facts before we jump to conclusions. But I do know the hearing we had in the Judiciary Committee today about gun control, which will ultimately lead to gun confiscation, is not what the people of Arkansas want, and it's not what law-abiding gun owners in the tens of millions across this country want either.
Senator, I'd like to see if I can get your reaction to just the overall media reaction and the conversation that is happening in America or not happening in America. Last week, we had the horrible shooting in Atlanta. 8 people lost their lives. For half the week, I thought they were all Asian. It turned out 6 of them were Asian, but you heard the talk in America. It was very, very race-oriented. Now I'm hearing that, and the gunman happened to be Caucasian. Here, the gunman happened to be originally from Syria. All the victims happened to be white. I notice the conversation right now at this stage is very different from the one America was having last week. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, Greg, my first thought is that I mourn for the victims of violence, and especially of mass murder, no matter what their race are. They're our fellow Americans, whether they're white, black, Asian, Latino, or any other race or ethnicity or creed. I mourn for them, and I pray for their loss and for peace for their families. Again, I say it's important that you don't jump to conclusions. The media jumped to conclusions about the shooter's motive last week in Atlanta. To my knowledge, law enforcement has still not conclusively established that motive. And we shouldn't have the media jumping to conclusions about what happened in Colorado, again, until we have all the facts and we can make reasonable inferences and draw reasonable conclusions. But the media too often jumps to conclusions that tend to fit their narrative, not just after acts of horrific violence, but every day whenever they put the news in a slanted fashion.
That's true. Big events and small events, everybody seems to want to tell the story they want to tell. Sir, the border obviously is a major crisis. I heard, though, Candace Owens put it differently. She says, this is not a crisis. This is more of a plan. And globalists, they want the cheap labor, and Democrats want future voters. I thought that was very interesting, and it kind of made sense in a way why the Biden administration is not behaving the way, well, an administration would behave if they wanted to secure and close the borders. What's your sense overall of what's happening, and how do we control this thing when the administration doesn't seem to want to?
Well, Greg, there's an old joke that you shouldn't attribute to conspiracy or design, which could be what should be attributed, or what could be attributed, to simple incompetence. And I think this is an instance in which Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas are just in over their head, and they were totally oblivious to the signals they were sending. Joe Biden throughout the campaign and the entire administration, the first 2 months of this administration. Their primary goal has been a massive increase in legal immigration to flood our markets with cheap labor and amnesty the 15 to 20 million illegal aliens who are in this country now. Now, I don't think they anticipated having a border crisis in the first 2 months, complicating the passage of that legislation. But it is true that it is their policies have created that border crisis. 3 in particular. First, they took the public health exclusionary order that Donald Trump implemented across the board and excluded minors from it. Well, you shouldn't be surprised that we have a huge surge in minors at our border. Second, they eliminated the Remain in Mexico policy. So migrants showed up at our border and made bogus asylum claims, more than 80% of which are rejected. And we told them you have to stay in Mexico and have your claim adjudicated there. And then third, the so-called safe third country agreements. That said that if you leave your home country, the first country through which you pass, usually Guatemala, occasionally Mexico, is where you have to seek asylum. You don't get to come to America to seek asylum. When you leave your country, maybe you're an asylum seeker, but if you get all the way to America, you're just an economic migrant. The Biden administration could implement those 3 policies this week if it chose. I don't think they want to, because they would be admitting that they made a mistake and that Donald Trump's policies had, in effect, closed the border.
Senator, finally, you are a veteran of the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. You did something very interesting. After you finished Harvard Law School, you joined the Army. You became an officer, an infantry officer. Now, a lot of folks, if they had a law degree, and this is perfectly honorable, they would become an Army lawyer or a Navy lawyer. You chose to become an infantryman, and you don't need a law degree to do that. You certainly don't need a Harvard Law degree to do that. Why did you choose that option? It's most impressive, quite frankly.
Greg, maybe I needed to redeem myself after I had gone to Harvard Law School. But after the 9/11 attacks, I really wanted to serve our country. I wanted to defend our freedom on the front lines. It took me a couple of years to finish school and pay off my loans, get my affairs in order. But I was always on the path towards the Army and joining the infantry and wanting to serve overseas. I ended up serving in both Iraq and Afghanistan and honoring our fallen heroes at Arlington National Cemetery in between. I just felt, as a young American who was able to shoulder my share of the burden of defending our freedom, that's what I should do. And I wanted to do it, on the front lines and be the main effort, so to speak, as you know, Greg. And that's in the infantry when it comes to the Army. So I served with great fellow soldiers, and I was the privilege of a lifetime to lead them in combat.
I can. Absolutely. Well, Senator, again, most impressive. And thank you so much. Please come back. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas. All the best.
Thank you, Greg.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.